It's the middle of the night in the middle of England. My wife has gone up to bed. The LP playing some early ragtime music has come to an end. And I'm sitting at the old hearth in my library at home. And the only thing that's wrong is that my pipe, a friend of many years, is for some reason refusing to get going tonight. But we'll proceed in any case. My name's Malcolm Noble, and you may have realised that this podcast isn't going to have the rush and dash of the usual things that you might get from me, and that's largely because I think it's on a more personal level. For many years, I have had the Agatha Christie bug. In fact, I'm 63, so I'll let you work out how many years I've been reading the Queen of Crime, and I thought it would be nice to put together, I don't know, a batch of 4 or 5 talks perhaps, sharing with you that obsession. So this isn't a new series of shows, please don't think that. It's just a picnic basket of fireside chats about Agatha Christie. On one of them, I certainly want to talk about Agatha Christie's relationship with the archaeology. And another one, I guess, would have to be devoted to the mousetrap. And then we would need to talk about her famous disappearance, and then devote another episode to 4 or 5 of her classics. But I want to start by discussing with you the reference books, guidebooks and bibliographies which I use when reading Agatha Christie. Now I have so many of these reference books. I won't bore you by reading out the titles. I've got more than I shall ever need. So it was a bit difficult to decide which ones to talk about. The First Lady of Crime, The Mousetrap Story, Agatha Christie, and All That Mouse. Now, my way into this isn't to try and choose the best books, because that largely depends on what you're using them for. So I decided that I would just choose the ones that I seem to thumb through most. So the books that I'm going to discuss with you this evening are going to be the ones that virtually every time I read an Agatha Christie book, there's one of these to hand as the sort of like accompanying music. Before we get going, I do want to stress I am not an expert on Agatha Christie. I'm not an expert on literature or anything like that. I'm an Agatha Christie fan, a devotee, and I'm just here to really share my experience. The Agatha Christie Companion, The Mousetrap Man. And the first one that I'd like to tell you about is Agatha Christie, the official centenary celebration. And of course, this was first published in 1990. It's, my copy is a paperback, about A4 size, very slim volume, falls off short of 100 pages. Edited by Lynn Underwood and distributed through HarperCollins. It's very well illustrated. It has some very nice short articles written by the right people, the people who are the authority in the area, about the different stages and the aspects of Agatha Christie's work. But what I like about it is the very useful, complete list of her books, which is reliable, that's unusual, with the dates of publication in the UK and the US, giving also which short stories appeared in which collections. It then has a list of her plays with their first appearances, or performances rather, and a list of the movies. So it is very nice for putting a book into context, as well as having a bit of a relaxing read at a particular article when you want to take a break from the mystery that you're reading. Its disadvantage is in its date. It was published in 1990, so is getting on for 25 years out of date now, but it's still a valuable book, and I've not found any inaccuracies in it, which is nice to see. That's Agatha Christie, the official centenary celebration, 1890 to 1990. There was a stage when you'd have to pay £20 for a copy of this book, but it has fallen off in value in recent years, and you should well be able to pick up a copy for less than a tenner, and it is very much available through the second-hand market. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, we're in business. The pipe is going. There we are. So I can do the rest with the pipe in my mouth, which, of course, somewhat defeats the object. My second choice, and please don't think that this is in any order, but my second selection is Agatha Christie, A Reader's Companion by Wagstaff and Poole. This was published in 2004, I think. Let me check. Yes, 2004 by the Aram Press. It's primarily intended as a book collector's guide, identifying the first editions on both sides of the Atlantic. And it stands up very well with that. It describes the dust wrappers well, in some cases giving you the actual sizes so you could compare them with what you might have in your hand. It does fall off a little bit, and I think the editors would agree with this, when it deals with the more recent books, which are given barely half a page each, and that is a bit of a letdown. For each book you get a bit of a background to the publishing process, a synopsis of the plot, and some idea of the press reaction. So it is a very good brief introduction to each title as you set down to read it. Now, with Vanessa Wagstaff in charge, you would expect the picture editing to be pretty good, and it's better than that. It is very, very good, and to such an extent that although it's not intended as a coffee table book, it actually stands up very well as a coffee table book as well as a source of reference. So yes, I use it a lot. That is the Agatha Christie Reader's Companion by Vanessa Wagstaff and Stephen Poole. And now we come to the third selection, which is probably the most well-thumbed book of all. This has been with me a long time. I found it in a discontinued basket of W.H. Smith's when they used to sell books for 25p, pretty close to its publication actually. It was published in 1980, and it is Robert Barnard's A Talent to Deceive, An Appreciation of Agatha Christie. Robert Barnard was obviously a crime writer, more popular over in the States actually than in the UK, and he only died last year, 2013, and he produced a mountain of work. But this is the one I refer to virtually every day, I guess. A Talent to Deceive by Robert Barnard. It's a novel-sized book and describes her talent to deceive, describes the way that she wrote her novels and what makes them successful, and points the way to the more choice items. And that is what is useful about this book, is it does guide you to what you want to read next. There's a bibliography compiled by Barnard's wife. Okay, it's a fairly complete bibliography. Doesn't go into too much detail about reprints, and doesn't distinguish between the different prints quite as much as you may want to. But it's useful. It's useful, and it's fairly complete. Then at the back of the book, in an appendix, it gives a summary and a brief assessment of each of the books, telling you quite how they fit into the canon and if they're any good or not. And it is a very frank assessment in some cases. So this is very useful for when you're thinking, what do I want to read next? And this is a useful book for that. Now, Barnard's very brave in that he chooses 3 prize specimens to consider in detail. Now then, I wonder if you agree with his selection. The 3 prize specimens are 5 Little Pigs, Hercule Poirot's Christmas, and A Murder is Announced. Now, I'm sure that none of us would agree with all 3 of those. My own view is that, yes, 5 Little Pigs is excellent and probably one of her best. Murder is Announced is a good idea, but probably not one of her top 3 books, I don't think. Hercule Poirot's Christmas is very good, apart from the fact that it's not very Christmassy, so it does seem to be a bit of a letdown. But those are Robert Barnard's 3 prize specimens. I wonder if you agree. 5 Little Pigs, A Murder is Announced, and Hercule Poirot's Christmas. And so that's Robert Barnard's A Talent to Deceive, an appreciation of Agatha Christie. And as I say, this is a book that, along with a biography, which I'll mention in a bit, that I use more than any other. I can't recommend it too much. The Mousetrap Man, Peter Saunders. Agatha Christie's Secret Notebooks.
Now I've just come into the kitchen to make a couple of cups of cocoa, late night cocoa, before we discuss the last 2 of the books. I was discussing with a customer in my bookshop last week about why we enjoy going back to the novels even though we know who done it. And she was suggesting that when we reread the Agatha Christie books, we get that added pleasure of picking up the clues which Agatha Christie laid down for us, but which we missed the first time. And of course this can last for several readings. It's especially so in The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, but it also works in Hercule Poirot's Christmas, which was one of Robert Barnard's 3 prize specimens. Now I'm going to take one of these cups of cocoa upstairs, and then I'll catch you again in the library. The Life and Times of Miss Jane Marple, The Life and Times of Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie's Poirot, the bedside, bathtub and armchair companion to Agatha Christie. Now, moving on, we come to John Curran's 2 books, The Secret Notebooks and the follow-up, which I think is not really a sequel, but a follow-up, which I think is by far the better book, Murder in the Making, where he uses the notebooks, or Agatha Christie's notebooks, to give some background as to and some hypotheses as to how the individual books were developed. So again, when you're settling down to reading Murder in the Vicarage, for example, although that's not a very good example, but when you're sitting down to read Murder in the Vicarage, Murder in the Making can put it into context for you and give a bit more depth to your enjoyment. The thing that John Curran has done especially well is the way that he's used the notebooks, because the notebooks are actually quite cryptic. They're very brief. They are 1, 2, 3 words at a time, sometimes a bit more. But they show how Agatha Christie's mind was working, very quick, very sharp. But it's very difficult to build a narrative out of such homework. And John Curran's done very well, actually, in producing 2 books from a whole mass, dozens of these notebooks, but quite difficult to work with, I should imagine. I can imagine him, when he first came across them, thinking, well, what can I do with these? How can I use these? So he's to be congratulated with what he's done with them. I should have said, published by HarperCollins in 2011. This is Murder in the Making. I do like the illustrations. There's not a lot of them, but they are all very pertinent. So you can get drawings of St Mary Mead, details of Agatha Christie's handwritten notes for different things. So, yes, for me, Murder in the Making is the better of John Curran's books. Stories and secrets from her archive. Now, I said that I was selecting my books in no particular order. I was just choosing the ones that I seem to use more frequently than the other books on the bookshelf. But I have to say I have saved the best until last. When I say that Agatha Christie, The Woman and Her Mysteries by Gillian Gill is the best book on Agatha Christie, that's giving it short change. Actually, this is the best biography of a crime writer that I've read, and I've been reading these things for many years. Okay, let's discuss why I think it's so good. Gender was so much a part
of Agatha Christie's approach to her writing. I mean that she wrote as a mother, daughter, sister, grandmother even. That was her angle. That's how she came into it. And because Gillian Gill uses that as her platform, I think she gets closer to Agatha Christie than anybody else. Now, she's not the only biographer to have said that Agatha Christie's skill was removing herself from the narrative, largely because of her shyness. But Gillian Gill uses that concept very, very well when explaining the different aspects of Christie's work. She also gives a very balanced and almost forensic review of the disappearance debate, and is very fair, I think, to Agatha Christie in that respect. We also pick up the different phases of Agatha Christie's life from this book, as reflected in her novels and her experiences of publication, especially the relationship with her agents. So this book is just a good book to read. It really is. I can't praise it enough. But it's also a very good book to read an excerpt from before you read an Agatha Christie novel, so you can find out what was going on in her life and where her mind was at the time she was writing. And this book is very useful that it will work. The other thing that I like about it is the very good reference endnotes at the back. Got a superb bibliography as well. But the reference and the endnotes at the back are some of the best that I've seen. In fact, very often when I want to relax, I will come to this book and I will just read the reference notes at the back. I guess to praise it any further will be superfluous, but I can't recommend it enough. Agatha Christie, A Woman and Her Mysteries by Gillian Gill. The best book that I've come across on Agatha Christie, and certainly the best biography of any crime writer that I've read. I should have said at the beginning that it was published by Robson's Books in 1990 in the US, 1991 in the UK. So there we are. Those are 5 books which I recommend from my own experience as guidebooks and reference books when you sit down to read an Agatha Christie novel. I hope you'll join me next time when I think we'll have a go at talking about Agatha Christie and archaeology, unless some other subject butts in the meantime. Can I just remind you that I do have a series of videos on YouTube. Malcolm Noble talks about crime fiction classics, and you can catch my weekly newsletter either on the podcasts accessible through my website, malcolmnoble.com, and it is now featured, that newsletter is now featured on Cross Counties Radio 2, and you will find that at the weekends. Scheduling bounces around a little bit, but again, visit my website for the latest news of that. I'd like to thank you for listening. If you've got this far without hiccuping, well done. I'm just about to put on the ragtime music back on the turntable, so I shall wish you a very good night, and God bless.